I'm Layla, 37 years old, and I've been married to my husband Jimmy for 13 years. Currently, we live together as a family of four, including our daughter, Karen, and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after my father-in-law passed away, we began living with my mother-in-law in her home. Unfortunately, this arrangement was far from peaceful. Shortly after we moved in, she started to pester me about dinner. Is dinner ready? How long are you planning to make everyone wait? She'd complain as I was cooking, coming into the kitchen and even tasting the food. This pot roast has no flavor. It's awful, she'd say. I'd reply, I thought I had seasoned it well. She'd retort, how could you taste it and still have it turn out like this? You are really bad at cooking. Jimmy and Karen must feel so pitiful with this food. I'm sorry Jimmy must be having a hard time with such a useless wife. Hurried up and set the table. Despite her constant complaints, she never helped with preparing dinner. In fact, she left all the household chores to me and lounged around during the day. When dinner was finally ready and the whole family sat down to eat, Jimmy and Karen praised the pot roast that my mother-in-law had earlier criticized, saying, "This pot roast is delicious, and yeah, Mom, it's tasty." Then, my mother-in-law said, yes, indeed, the seasoning is just right, completely contradicting her earlier criticism. Despite her harassment and nasty commands towards me, she always spoke kindly to Jimmy and Karen, probably not wanting them to dislike her. Layla is really good at cooking, she'd say in front of them. Today, Layla did all the housework, considering my health. She is truly a capable wife. Isn't that right, Layla? In truth, my mother-in-law had just forced all the household responsibilities onto me. As I attempted to deny it, my mother-in-law kicked my leg under the table where no one else could see. Despite her blatant attitude, Jimmy thanked me with a beaming smile, believing that I was always kind to his mom, although it couldn't be further from the truth. I couldn't hide my bewilderment, but Jimmy remained blissfully unaware of the harassment. He genuinely cared for his mother-in-law, and after his father-in-law passed away, he became even more concerned for her well-being. I couldn't bring myself to speak ill of my mother-in-law to Jimmy, who loved her deeply. My fondness for her also prevented me from confiding in anyone about the situation. When it was decided that we would live with my in-laws, Karen, our daughter, was delighted. She loved her grandma, and they were very close, always playing and taking baths together. Mother-in-law's harassment escalated when I came back from shopping one day and found the room in disarray. Mother-in-law, what happened? Why is everything in such a mess? I asked, genuinely surprised. She replied smugly, I couldn't find something, and before I knew it, it became a mess. I knew the house wouldn't be turned upside down just from looking for something. It was clear that she had done it to harass me. Sorry, I'm going to dinner with friends now. Cleanup's on you, she said, leaving me to deal with the aftermath. As expected, I ended up spending the entire day cleaning, unable to focus on anything else. When mother-in-law returned home, she remarked, laundry, dishes, cleaning, none of it's done, making it clear that her intent was to torment me. I clenched my fists, suppressing my anger at my mother-in-law's taunts, and quietly continued with the housework. Hurry up or everyone will come home. If Jimmy realizes what an incapable wife you are, he'll surely divorce you. She sneered, never lifting a finger to help, only rushing and nagging me incessantly. As dinner remained far from ready, my frustration grew. In the end, dinner was late, and Jimmy asked, looking concerned, are you feeling ill? No, it's not that, but I started to explain. But when I glanced at my mother-in-law, she was glaring at me, a silent warning not to speak up. Today has been a bit hectic, I said weakly. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. No, it's totally fine. Jimmy reassured, his kindness shining through. Mother-in-law, however, didn't find his understanding amusing. Instead, her daily harassment towards me intensified. Lately, it wasn't just about me. She began interfering in Karen's affairs too. You two seem to be trying to get Karen into a private middle school, she accused. Yes, we are. Is there a problem with that? I countered. It's cruel to make her study late every night for exams. Stop it right now. We are not forcing her to study against her will. Karen herself wants to go to a private middle school. Kids should play and have fun. There's no need to force them to study now, I defended. But working hard now will open up more options for her future, and Karen wants this. We're not forcing it on her, I insisted, standing firm against her accusations. Recently, as Karen had been studying late into the night and attending tutoring sessions, our family time had decreased noticeably, and my mother-in-law seemed displeased. Give up on the middle school exams. It's a waste of time, she commanded one day. I couldn't hold back my anger at her disregard for Karen's feelings and her selfish remarks. Isn't it normal to support Karen when she wants to do this? I retorted, surprising my mother-in-law, as I had never talked back before. Karen's exams have nothing to do with you, mother-in-law. Frustrated and feeling like arguing would lead us nowhere, I left, declaring, enough of this. I'm going to pick up Karen. Mother-in-law continued to harass me in front of Jimmy and Karen, seemingly unable to let go of the fact that I had talked back. During dinner that day, she criticized the meal, saying, "Today's dinner looks plain. Is this all we have?" Jimmy, unable to stay silent any longer, snapped at her. "Come on, Mom, don't complain about the meal that Layla made." His anger startled mother-in-law, and she quickly backpedaled, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say." Not wanting to escalate the situation, I brushed it off with, "It's fine." After dinner, while I was washing dishes, mother-in-law approached me and muttered, "Remember this," before retreating to her room. From then on, every day was filled with fear, wondering what she might do next. Then, one day, it was the day of Karen's acceptance announcement. We nervously headed to the venue. When we checked the bulletin board, Karen's number was clearly written there. "You did it, Karen. Awesome. You got accepted. Yay!" We were all overjoyed. Karen had been studying tirelessly for months, and thanks to her relentless efforts, she had passed the middle school exams. "We have to celebrate today," I exclaimed. "Karen, what would you like to eat?" "Steak," she replied, her absolute favorite. "Should we order delivery then?" I suggested, and everyone cheered in agreement. On my way home, I called the steakhouse and ordered a luxurious steak for delivery. We also decided to buy a cake, so I made a small detour, asking my mother-in-law to receive the steak delivery at the house. When I called her, she said, "Understood, I'll take care of it." Due to various detours, we were completely past lunchtime by the time we got home. We were all hungry and eagerly anticipating the steak. "I'm starving. I want to eat the steak now," Karen exclaimed. "You're right. We're late. The steak should be here. Let's eat plenty, okay," I reassured her. Upon our arrival home, we bumped into mother-in-law's friends as they were leaving. They all said in unison, "Thanks for the feast," and left, leaving me puzzled. I had a bad feeling and rushed inside the house. The dining table, where the steak was supposed to be, was in disarray. I asked mother-in-law, "Did you eat the steak?" "Ah, if it's a delivery steak, I enjoyed it with my friends at a luncheon." "You'll pay for it later," she replied defiantly. "What are you doing?" I yelled, utterly shocked by her audacity. "You're probably planning to order delivery and slack off from housework. I won't allow that," she retorted, completely unapologetic. This was supposed to be a celebration for Karen's success, and I had informed mother-in-law in advance that today was Karen's exam acceptance announcement. It seemed she had forgotten, which explained her thoughtless actions. When Karen and Jimmy arrived late, Karen, having overheard our conversation in the corridor, was in tears. "Grandma saw me," she said, her voice choked with disappointment. Karen had been excited to share the news with her grandmother quickly, but it seemed inconceivable to her that her own grandmother had forgotten such an important day. "Mother-in-law, today was Karen's middle school acceptance announcement. How could you forget such an important day? That's awful, I exclaimed, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief at her callousness. Mother-in-law seemed unable to hide her agitation, her lack of remorse only deepening our disappointment in her. Why today, Layla? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Mother-in-law's voice trembled with a mix of surprise and guilt. I did tell you, I replied, my anger overshadowed by disappointment. I felt a strange certainty that left me too numb to be furious. Karen had worked hard and earned her acceptance. We had planned to celebrate by indulging in her favorite steak, but mother-in-law had eaten it with her friends, oblivious to the significance of the day. I called you about the delivery, didn't I? I challenged, hoping for some explanation. Mom, did you do it on purpose? Jimmy's voice carried a mix of hurt and confusion. Mother-in-law's face grew paler, her attempt to find an excuse faltering. I had suspected her harassment for a while, but now it seemed Jimmy was starting to understand too. Without a word, she approached Karen, offering a weak apology and suggesting we all go to the steakhouse, insisting she would pay. Karen's response was sharp and unforgiving. I hate Grandma, she declared, pushing mother-in-law away and fleeing to her room. Witnessing her granddaughter's rejection seemed to stun mother-in-law. She stumbled, falling to the ground, unable to comprehend the magnitude of being despised by someone she loved so dearly. After that, I confided in Jimmy about the ongoing harassment, my heart heavy with the burden of secrecy. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, a mix of guilt and concern in his eyes. I couldn't say anything when I thought about you and Karen, I confessed, regret coloring my words. I'm sorry for forcing you all this time, he said, his voice heavy with remorse. You don't have to endure this anymore. Jimmy suggested we move to escape the constant torment. Karen also expressed her desire to live away from mother-in-law, providing us with a reason to leave without hesitation. On the day we moved, while I was packing, mother-in-law entered the room, her eyes reflecting sorrow and desperation. Are you really leaving the house? She asked, her voice breaking. Yes, you must be glad to be away from me, she continued, her words heavy with self-pity. I don't exactly hate you, I replied, my voice tinged with exhaustion. Can you please leave? You're in the way of my packing. But instead of leaving, mother-in-law began to plead desperately. Please don't leave. I'll apologize for everything. Please, I can't bear to be apart from Carrie. No matter how much I explained, she wouldn't let go, clinging to me and crying, her desperation hanging heavy in the air. So, I made a proposal. Actually, we are moving to my parents' house. If you really can't bear to be apart from Carrie, will you come with us? My father, usually stern with a scary face, knew that mother-in-law was aware of this. I said it somewhat maliciously, thinking she would never agree. Surprisingly, she did. I understand. That's fine with me, she said, leaving me stunned. It seemed she wanted to be with Carrie that badly. I agreed to live together since she wouldn't harass me in front of my parents, and if she did, I could report it to my father. Jimmy added, sorry, if something happens with my mom coming along, feel free to kick her out. So we all moved to my parents' house, and the cohabitation began. My father seemed dissatisfied, then mother-in-law came with us. Of course, he knew how she had harassed me and ruined Carrie's celebration. He didn't blame her directly, but his silent pressure kept mother-in-law shrinking. She spoke less and seemed downcast. When my mother and I asked for help with housework, she readily complied and worked hard. I couldn't help but laugh at her changed appearance. Life went on without any incidents for a while. But finally, mother-in-law reached her limit and yelled, I'm sick of this house. Your father is intimidating, and Carrie can't get through to him. I think Jimmy's attitude towards mother-in-law had become colder because he couldn't endure various things anymore. Karen, let's go home together, mother-in-law said, trying to forcibly pull Carrie and leave the house. Mother-in-law, stop it. Can't you see Carrie doesn't want to go? It's better to be with me than in this house, I intervened. Just then, my father arrived. What are you doing? Knock it off, he thundered. Frightened by my father's forcefulness, Mother-in-law froze in fear. I allowed you to live with us because you said you didn't want to be apart from your granddaughter. But if you try to take Carrie in against her will, I'll call the police for kidnapping. I didn't mean it that way, my father warned her sternly. Hearing my father's shout, Jimmy also rushed over. Mom, what are you doing? Just leave us. We can't be bothered by you anymore. I'm cutting ties completely. No, no way. Mother-in-law protested. But Karen shook off her hand and screamed, Get out. Even mother-in-law seemed shocked by this, dropping her shoulders and leaving the house in tears. Now she's back at her house, living a lonely life. Afterward, mother-in-law became reclusive, and it seems that even neighbors and friends started keeping their distance. On the other hand, our family is living peacefully every day. Karen is studying hard at a private school, and Jimmy has become very friendly with my parents, especially my father, with whom he drinks every day. I wish I had talked to Jimmy earlier and moved to my parents' house.